Well, Arklantis, that's derived from the ancient lost civilization of Atlantis. And I compared it to Arkansas because in the grand scheme of hip hop, our state is not represented in the collective of the hip hop story. It's a state that people know about, they've heard about it, they're not sure in regards to, do they really got dope rappers down there? And it's just one of those, it's almost legend. And I thought it was fitting because a lot of people hadn't heard of Atlantis. They've heard of it, some have, and it's almost like legend. They know about it, but they've never seen it. And Arkansas is pretty much represented the same way when you look at modern day representation of hip hop. Arkansas, the story of it hasn't been told. There's a lot of talent here from all cities and towns throughout Arkansas, and me representing the capital city, Little Rock, but there's talent all over this great state. So it was only fitting that I merged the concept of Atlantis and Arkansas and just respectfully call it Arklantis. And the soundtrack to these times, which is the subtitle, it basically is the soundtrack to these times. What's going on? It's got a pulse on everything from reality to politics to the things that are just going on in our lives from a spiritual standpoint, a street standpoint, a reality standpoint, hip hop standpoint. And I feel as though the subject matter that's on this album is gonna age well, especially going forward into 2026 and beyond. I feel as though I just captured the pulse of everything and appropriately made the subtitle the soundtrack to these times. And these times, whether you're listening to it right now or once we get into 2026, it's still gonna be these times, no matter when the album catches up with the listener or whenever a listener has a time to sit down and dive into this album. It's gonna be accurate and relevant no matter what time or when they get a chance to listen to this project. And it's definitely a representation of where I am now in my creative process. It's an accurate reflection in the present moment of where I am as an artist, person, spiritually, emotionally, and I'm very proud of it, and it's definitely an accurate representation. It was actually after I did the second version it was a project, Arkalien King. And it was after that project, a light bulb went off. Me and my producer, engineer, my bro, Ferocious, we kind of looked at each other and we felt like we got the recipe now and what we're doing, the direction we want to go. And plus I grew from, it was almost like a 3-step drop. Street Preacher was the first version of this album. Arkalien King was the second version of this album. And then it was after that I realized, no, I gotta go back, scrap it, and update and bring forth what I've learned. Because I was constantly growing in the process from a creative standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, perspective standpoint, and awareness standpoint. And so it was after Arkalien King that really sparked the creative fire to make this a double album and to just go all in, just leave it all on the table. Well, Arklantis is an important album because it's conscious, it's unapologetic, it's bold, and it's totally against the grain from what's out there in regards to representation of Arkansas. There are a lot of artists that are creative in their own ways. A lot of artists, and it's not a knock, it just is what it is. A lot of artists chase trends and try to fit in. And with this project, I totally went against that and represented Arkansas in a ground level, rooted in reality, opposed to what's going on. And it's an alternative for those that want another perspective of Arkansas, a real lens. It captures, it's an accurate representation of what's going on in the state on the ground level, a deeper level that the listener probably wasn't even aware of, or most listeners are probably not even aware of when they think of Arkansas. So I think it represented in a way that gives it balance next to a lot of the other things they hear coming up out of here. It reveals how much I've grown. It reveals a lot of the things that I've learned, and the accuracy of the pulse of the music and the subject matter in alignment to these present times that we're in and we're going forward in. Again, it's a representation of who I am. I was raised in the streets, came from that element, and I also became enlightened, awakened, and the trick was to, how could I perfectly marry those two things and make it seem seamless? So it was very important to speak on both sides of that and strike a perfect balance, because I'm not the only one. There are others out there that came from the streets to go on to awaken and go on to higher things and deeper thinking and more meaningful things. So I tried to just encompass it and cover it all where it weaves together so that the listener, I'd be able to, touch the listener in a variety of ways in regards to that. I would have to say there's three of them. One is 'Cause I Know, the other one is Through My Eyes, and the last one is Indie. Those are very personal records because 'Cause I Know, the hook, I know what it's like not having money all alone. I know what it's like. It puts myself in the perspective of the listener, letting them know that even though you're going through this, I went through that too. And in regards to Through My Eyes, that one is also very personal. I touched on some things that happened in my life, childhood, growing up, betrayal, struggle, and it speaks to the pain and the struggle. And in regards to Indie is very personal because that's more like a journey record. That talks about when I started rapping, some of the journey when I was in Atlanta, going through two groups, losing one of my brothers, Rich, from my first group. And so yeah, that album, that song also was very personal, along with the other two. So yeah, I love those records. It was emotional making those records, but yeah, those are very personal records. It was important to capture, there was a couple of things, but the most important thing that I had to capture was the pulse of the reality of the state of this country that we in. I touched on political things that are happening at this present time that are gonna continue to keep happening. It's not just an isolated thing, a one-off thing. it's a thing that's happening and it's going to continue happening. So I felt that it was my responsibility as an artist to speak truth to power in regards to what's going on out here politically, because the current state of what we're in right now is very, very dangerous. It's a very slippery slope. And a lot of artists aren't touching on that. And I felt, again, it was my duty and my responsibility to touch on the political aspect as well as, you know, the current state of hip hop from the industry standpoint. So those two things were very important, the political aspect in regards to what's going on in DC and how that trickles down and affect the average person on ground level, and then also the state of the industry and what's going on from the top of that industry and how it trickles down to the listener on the ground level. So those two particular, amongst other things, but those two were very important that I touched on this project. First and foremost, Ferocious, Dondre Vincent, he's the architect of this album in regards to sonically and just the way that it all wove together. He produced the majority of this album, but I had a couple of other producers that contributed tracks to this album. But the importance of Ferocious, I can't state that enough, because he touched every record in regards to the mix, recording, and just his input on every record. Even if he didn't produce the song, he had input on the record. And that was very vital to make the whole body of work cohesive. So his contribution to this album was huge. You know, the album wouldn't be the album that it is or the body of work that it is without him. That's how vital he was to this project. And I was grateful to have him sitting at the head to engineer and quarterback this album. Some of the other producers that I had was Don Damn Key. He produced a couple of tracks on there. DJ Payne 1 did a couple, he did 2. And Manny Lyrical did a few tracks on there. That's a gentleman that I connected with. He's actually in Russia, a Russian producer. So, you know, dopeness when it comes to hip hop, there's no boundaries or limits to where the reach and the scope of hip hop and producers and what they bring to the game, because everyone loves hip hop, no matter if it's just an American thing, but it's a global thing. Don Key, his contributions to this song was important. His sound, it was almost like a pot of stew, and each ingredient, whether it was some carrots, some peas, or whatever it is, it was just enough to make this a perfect pot of stew. So the importance of Don Key's contribution to this album was very important. And then also DJ Payne 1, he added another layer to it as well. So each producer brought a unique sound to give it a perfect balance to go with what me and Ferocious had already laid out. So we just basically added a few more sprinkles of seasoning to go into the total body of work to make it a cohesive body of work. They'll be able to hear the growth and not only the subject matter, they'll be able to hear it sonically, because, again, it all goes back to Ferocious. Working with him, he got me outside of my comfort zone in regards to, before I started working with him, my method and my technique of how I recorded in the studio was it was what I learned, you know, learned on the fly, in real time, on the job training. But Ferocious, what he did, he really trained me on the skill, the art, and the craft of actually recording I thought I knew, but in working with Ferocious, he literally broke me down and built me back up again, and it was a scary thing, but he told me to trust him, and I trusted him, and he was right. So it sharpened the way that I recorded my vocals, everything. You can tell that my vocals are cleaner. They're not muddied up with a whole bunch of ad-libs and double stacks and all of that. And so the recording process vocally, you know, you'll be able to hear the growth and the difference in that completely. And then also just the overall feel of how I marry the sound, the track, the beat, and as well as the subject matter that I'm speaking on. I'm going way out there, and I'm being real bold in some of the things that I'm saying on this album. So instantly, the listener will be able to tell that there's growth. That's a real grown man, and he's riding that beat, and he knows what he's doing. This ain't his first rodeo. This ain't just no, you know, a guy that just started rapping yesterday. They'll be able to tell that he's seasoned and he knows what he's doing, and that comes across in the overall sound of the song. I want the listener to walk away feeling like they were touched, they was moved, they was uplifted, they was awakened, or there was a spark or a fuse that was lit in them in listening to the album. There's things on there that'll make a person cry. There's things on there that'll turn a person up. And I just want them to feel like they connected, you know, and to get an idea of what Arkansas is really like, and especially Little Rock, and listening to this album. I want them to pick up things that they probably didn't know. I want them to relate, be like, damn, I went through that too. Or, you know, I just want them to connect with the body of work, and I just want them to walk away and feel like they were overly satisfied with the product, the body of work. They can tell that I gave my all and I didn't just bullshit them and I didn't take them fast. I really took my time and gave them something that would really touch them. The soul is in it, so I just want them to feel the soul. The opening scene would basically be the state of hip hop as it is, a state of ruin. Bodies stacked on bodies, assembly lines, this, that, destruction, death, hopelessness, dark. And then from all of that, a light emerges, a flicker that starts to burn and get brighter and brighter and brighter. And that being symbolizing Arkansas, Little Rock, coming forth, rising through all of that destruction, death, and darkness. Hence, the opening track to the album, The Day the Locust Manifests. So, yeah, it'll be like a horrific scene, but then quickly it transitions to a flicker of light, a flicker of hope, a rising light. And that'll set the tone for what's to come after that, but that'll be the opening scene.